Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.
But Don Nealon's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football. Here is Harris in trouble. Stiff arms, the would-be tackler. Comes down over the 25 to 20. Goes around about it to 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
Takes the Slater one-on-one with the defender. Look at Pat White.
West Virginia football. You know what that's about. They don't know what it's about. West Virginia football. Football, people. They shoot up on fire. No more air and helmet. Let them know. Leave no doubt tonight. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into the September 5th live stream here on the Country Roads webcast channel. As you guys know who started following along with us last year, once we started doing these live streams, we try to do one weekly throughout the football season. Last week we didn't get to, so that means we're going to treat you to two this week. That's why I've got this one coming on Tuesday. We'll have another one coming most likely Thursday, and in between those we'll be releasing the CRW podcast episode previewing the Duquesne game. Just released the review of the Penn State game yesterday. Hopefully you've listened or watched that here on YouTube or listened to it on any podcast platform. But having said that, I wanted to bring you guys an extra one this week, give you guys a chance to chime in with your thoughts on the Penn State game, on the upcoming season, of course, the upcoming game against Duquesne. So definitely drop your questions, comments, concerns throughout as we go throughout the stream here, trying to address those with you guys, and we'll try and be back here, like I said, again later this week, and hopefully have Steven and Brad with me then as well. We'll see how that goes, but definitely look out for the podcast episode coming in the next couple of days. That's probably going to come either tomorrow evening or Thursday morning as far as the podcast episodes released. But in the meantime, we've got a few things to talk about from the Penn State game I wanted to discuss. You guys know that follow the channel. I've released the first player grades videos of the year. Started that series last year, did that for every game. And then about midway through the season, I started doing a video on the snap counts. I think I did it for about the final 5 or 6 games of the season, if I remember correctly. But those didn't get as many views as individual videos. So I figured, why not just take those, use them as a segment in our live streams that we're going to do weekly. So that's what I'm going to do here. That'll be our first segment coming up, is going to be snap counts. You see the if I could talk right, show schedule. It's a tongue twister there on the wall behind me there. We're going to talk about the snap counts from the game against Penn State, everybody that played, and then using the people that started and those snap counts as kind of my basis. I did my best to formulate my own depth chart, only a 2 deep at each position, so you won't see some names that you did see on the field and will see on the field, but just going off the Penn State game, try to formulate a bit of a 2 deep there, since we didn't get one with Neil Brown and James Franklin's little cat and mouse game there. Ahead of the first game, we didn't get any injury updates or any depth charts, what's led to some of us speculating, post game, why didn't we see some of these players we heard so much about, the Jaheim Whites, the, Jashawn Polks, the EJ Hortons, and turns out, we can hear more about those in the injury updates, and we're going to get to those here in the show as well. So those are kind of the main topics I'm going to touch on throughout, but in between, I would love to touch on some of your all's comments there. So be sure to drop your thoughts they're in the chat. We'll touch on those throughout, as Timothy Green did here. Appreciate you as always, Timothy, loyal to tune in and chime in. He says it's going to be another wonderful show. Let's go Mountaineers. Definitely. Let's go Mountaineers indeed, Timothy. So with no further ado, let's kick it off with the snap counts from the Penn State game. Let me pull this up for you guys momentarily here. As it pulls up, I'm going to take a drink of my coffee. All right, so snap counts against Penn State. Quarterback, obviously, you guys probably knew this one. Garrett Green playing 70 snaps and Nico Marcio playing 2 snaps. West Virginia had 70 or 71 snaps on offense, I believe it was. So Nico Marcio getting on for the 2 snaps that he did. One I know was the trick play. I'm trying to think of what the other one was right off. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but on for 2 snaps was Nico Marcio. Neither one of those very opportunistic situations for him. Definitely wasn't put in a position to succeed. And so fingers crossed coming up in this game against Duquesne. I think that we should see plenty of Nico. Ideally, I would say at least 2 quarters of Nico, because you want to have Nico ready. Knock on wood, something was to happen, you would need him against, Spit in week 3. You want to have him ready with some more experience. I know Neil probably wanted to get him on the field against Penn State. That's why he had those, certain plays drawn up for him. Unfortunately, they didn't work out, mainly because of, the time and area and everything in which they were called. But that's a whole nother conversation I won't get into. I'll digress on that. I think that's been covered ad nauseum at this point by many throughout Mountaineer Nation. But as far as the snap counts are concerned, 70 for Green, 2 for Nico Marcio. Running back, we got 46 snaps for CJ, 15 for Jalen Anderson, and 12 for Justin Johnson. I don't think Justin Johnson actually registered a carry in any of his 12 snaps, although it was the first possession of the second half, I believe, for West Virginia. He broke the, 15 to 17-yard run, something that was like that, I think, because that's when you thought West Virginia had caught some momentum. They were only down 14-7 to start the second half. They get the 3 and out that they need at that point, get the ball back, and you get a big chunk run from Justin Johnson. But that's when you get one of the very few penalties you had in the game. Unfortunately, it was a costly one, because then that kind of killed the drive and killed that little momentum you were trying to build right there. But all in all, West Virginia did a good job cleaning up the penalties from what we've seen in years past. I believe they only had 5 in the game. So all in all, better. But that was definitely probably the most costly penalty of the game there. And Justin Johnson didn't register a carry in the game because of it, but he did have 12 snaps. Jalen Anderson had 15 snaps, only got 5 carries. And like we said, CJ with 46. I think CJ obviously is going to see the majority of the carries. Ideally, maybe you'll see Anderson and Johnson get a little bit more, and you take Green's number down a little bit. You want to try and preserve him for the whole season, keep him healthy with his slight frame there. And of course, there's another running back that may get in the mix, more on him later. And then, of course, we did have a fullback get in the game, and it's one that we've covered here on the channel previously throughout the offseason. When he committed to West Virginia, he came in as a preferred walk-on. He's not on scholarship, but he was an All-American at Towson at the FCS level. And we talked about West Virginia is going to find ways to get him involved. He's not a tight end like these other bodies West Virginia has on the roster. He's really just a traditional fullback. You saw him out there wearing number 35. The one snap he got involved in was the one wrinkle. Well, I don't want to say the one wrinkle, but one of the wrinkles that I picked up on while watching the game live that I really liked from this offense. We've heard about, with Chad Scott as offensive coordinator now, that they're doing some more innovative things, that he really has, I believe, a good imagination, was how it was put by one of the players in the interviews here in fall camp, talking about Chad Scott. So hopefully, some of the tweaks that we did see in the offense were signs of that, and we'll see more of that to come. But one of those that we saw Luke Hamilton was involved in, he was on the field in the backfield. I believe it was Hamilton and CJ in the backfield, if I'm not mistaken, or it was Hamilton and Justin Johnson in the backfield. And Jalen Anderson came in motion on a little orbit motion behind Green, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was to the short side of the field. And you get the triple option look where Garrett either faked the handoff to CJ or Justin Johnson, whoever it was, And then you had the option look with Jalen Anderson coming on the orbit motion, and you had Luke Hamilton in at fullback as a lead blocker on that play. So I love that play design. It didn't work out for the Mountaineers. I think it ended up actually losing a yard or two as Penn State sniffed it out, and Penn State has a really fast defense, so I don't think the option was really going to work that great on them. But later in the season, hopefully West Virginia breaks that out and has more success with it, and hopefully there's other packages with Luke Hamilton involved there as a lead blocker at the fullback position. But that was his one snap in this game. At the wide receiver position, you got 56 snaps from Devin Carter, 54 from Cortez Braham, 36 from Preston Fox, 14 go to Jeremiah Aaron, 11 to the standout true freshman we've heard a lot about, Traylon Ray, 2 snaps to Jarrell Williams. Rodney Gallagher got on the field for the final play of the game on offense. He played special teams, though. Neil Brown did state. They tried to get him the ball there in the final play, and Hudson Clement was in there as well. And then at tight end, of course, Cole Taylor played a ton of snaps, 62. Neil Brown said he would like to get his snap count down slightly moving forward. Traylon Davis played 32 snaps. And then Victor Wickstrom, one of the international players on the West Virginia roster, did get in for a snap there late in the game at the tight end position. But it looks like you're going to see majority of Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis, and you may factor in the fullback I talked about earlier, Luke Hamilton, some as well throughout the season. Offensive line here, Thomas Remick, Zach Frazier, and Doug Nestor go all the way there with 70 snaps apiece. Wyatt Milam gets 61 because he sprained his ankle early in the game. I believe that was the first or second series. Can't remember right away, but Nick Malone came in on the series. West Virginia scored the touchdown on to even it up at 7-7, I believe, is when that was that Nick Malone was in. So that's good to see the former walk-on get on the field. He was on multiple plays. You see there 12 snaps, but good to see him involved in a scoring drive and filling in for Wyatt Milam. And then Brandon Yates, who ended up getting the start at right guard over Jaquay Hubbard, gets 58 snaps compared to Hubbard's 12. Although if you watched our offensive player grades video, Hubbard graded out pretty highly among the offensive players there. So let me see if you guys got any comments in here. I'll catch up on before we switch over to the defensive side. Nope, doesn't look like we've got too many people in here just yet. But if you do come in here live with us, ask you do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button, and that helps us whether you're watching live or watching on a playback. Giving this video a like will really help not only its performance, but future videos performances here on the channel as well. And if you're a West Virginia fan, college football fan, Big 12 fan, be sure hit the subscribe button. Helps us and it helps you. Helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content, out to Mountaineer Nation. Be sure to drop your comments along the way in there, any questions you got as well. I'll continue with the snap counts here on the defensive side. Let me pull this screen back up here, and we'll continue the rundown of the snap counts in the season opener against Penn State. Sean Martin got 54 snaps on the defensive line, and that's good to see him getting that many because I was a little bit concerned about his health. We knew he was wearing a green jersey through a lot of fall camp, so glad to see him involved in the action and heavily involved. And when he was on the field, he made his presence known, and I think he may not even be 100% yet. I don't know if they're going to come out and say that, but if that's not even Sean Martin at 100%, I think he's got a chance to be a real force this season. Eddie V got the start at the defensive tackle position, played 48 snaps, and then Mike Lockhart at the nose tackle position in a lot better shape now this season. They said last year that was the issue, was getting him into playing shape where he could be on the field a lot, and he was able to manage 45 snaps in this game. Then you get Fatorma Mulba coming in to spell him. And Fatorma Mulba, of course, transferred in from Penn State, so going against his former team. Good to see him get on the field, and he also graded out highly. You can check out the defensive player grades video to see just how high he did grade out. And then Day Hawkins, who's a guy we've talked about a lot throughout the offseason. A lot of people really high on, myself included. I think he's going to be a player that, maybe not be a starter, but he's going to make an impact when he does get on the field. He only got on for 12 snaps in this game. I think that role will continue to increase moving forward throughout the season. But despite only being involved in 12 snaps, he did make an impact when he was in the game. You saw him be the one that swatted that pass that should have been intercepted by Beanie Bishop on that third down, but either way led to, Penn State not converting that third down and forcing a punt due to him, being active and getting his hands up, batting that ball, and nearly causing a turnover in the game there. And then Tumiwa Durajay, I was surprised to see him play as much as he did with his 8 snaps, but also very impressed to see what he did during those 8 snaps, getting a sack on the night, the only solo sack. I believe West Virginia had another one that was maybe split, if I'm not mistaken, but I believe that was the only solo one. They should have had Aller a couple other times, but he was really good at avoiding the rush and throwing the ball away, or sometimes even making a play downfield after avoiding the rush. I know one time Trey Lathan had him dead to rights and had him around the legs, and that 6'5", 240-pound frame of Aller, he was just able to, with Lathan draped around his legs, throw the ball away using only his arm. So that just shows you a little bit about Aller's arm strength. But back to Durage, when he was in the game, I was really impressed with him, especially to only be a redshirt freshman coming over as a transfer from Kentucky. But he's someone the coaching staff was really high on, even coming out of high school. They were trying to recruit him. They got him through the transfer portal back to West Virginia, though, even though they didn't get him initially in the recruiting game. They got him recruiting him via transfer, and it pays off in the first game, coming up with the sack there in his 8 snaps. Then you get Hammond Russell playing 5 there at the nose tackle position as well, and Jalen Thornton, of course, the legacy player, son of the great John Thornton, probably has a bright future along the defensive line, got in on 4 snaps. The 2 bandits that saw action were the 2 that we kind of expected to see. Maybe a bit surprising that James Hurd Jr. didn't factor in after all we heard about him throughout spring. But I think in fall camp, Tyron Bradley just came in and really kind of surpassed him. And, James Hurd's still young, but I think we'll see him probably as early as this Saturday and some throughout the season. There's snaps to go around there, I feel like. And maybe even Bradley will get closer to being even with Bartlett. We'll see what happens there. But you see Bartlett getting 49 snaps to Bradley's 24. Then at the linebacker position, we really only played 3 guys there. Trey Lathan got 61 snaps. Lee Koba got 58. And Jaffa Veras did manage 4 snaps. The interesting fact there that, of course, has come out is that Trey Lathan, who we thought was going to be the will linebacker, and Lee Koba, who has been the Mike linebacker since last season, actually swapped positions for this game against Penn State. And although it's been addressed, Lee Koba is the only one that's really talked about it. I haven't heard any of the other coaches discuss it, and I haven't heard it be detailed as to if it's going to be a move that was just game plan specific for that contest against Penn State. And of course, Lee Koba is going to remain the Mike for the rest of the season, or if it's a move that they're thinking about making permanent and keeping Lee Koba at the will position and Trey Lathan at the Mike linebacker position. That remains to be seen. But either way, I thought it worked out good for both of them. Trey Lathan really flashed in his first start as a Mountaineer there. And Lee Koba, we know the force he can be, led the team in tackles with 13. And then, of course, Jaffa Veras spelling them. That's good to see. I think you got to get some other guys in there at the Mike linebacker position, though. Trey Lathan playing 61 snaps. That's a lot. We saw Lee Koba all year have to be an Ironman there last season, and I think it sometimes hurt West Virginia later in games. Maybe they were a little bit worn down. I would love to see Tyreek Austin Cave. I don't know if he was injured. I didn't hear any update on that, but we heard a lot more good things about him throughout this fall camp, and that was someone that the coaches have kind of been mum about the past season or two, and we were expecting to see more out of transferring in from Miami, and I think he has the talent to contribute, so would love to see him get on the field. And then you also got Caden Beiser, who was just put on scholarship. We knew the Mountaineers had like 2 scholarships remaining. They used one of those to gift former preferred walk-on Caden Beiser a scholarship, and he's played at the Mike linebacker position in the past. So I think between the 2, you'll see more snaps there spelling either Lathan or Koba, whoever ends up playing the Mike long-term. And then at the spear position, interesting here because Hershey McLaurin was, quote unquote, the starter there. But this is one of the 2 areas where the person that didn't start the game ended up outpacing the starter in snaps. And that's, of course, Lance Dixon, who was another guy that came over from Penn State. So another player facing his former team actually ended up with 34 snaps playing that spear spot as compared to 29 for Hershey McLaurin. And then the corners, West Virginia only played 4. Beanie Bishop, Andrew Wilson being the 2 starters, Malachi Ruffin and Montre Miller being the guys that spelled them. The absence that's notable and I think surprising is Jacoby Spells. We heard a lot of good things about him again through fall camp, that he was progressing well. We saw him get on the field last season. He made, the pick 6 to seal the deal against Virginia Tech, and being the highest rated recruit in the Mountaineers class, last year, a lot of people were expecting him to maybe secure, if not one of these starting spots, certainly be in the rotation. And I believe Neil Brown was asked about him in his press conference this week, and by all accounts wasn't injured, wasn't a discipline issue, just stated that these 4 guys were kind of ahead at this time. So hopefully, there's some ground to make up, it sounds like, for Spells, but hopefully he's able to do so because that's a guy with a high ceiling and a lot of promise and potential. And Maybe we'll see him get on the field this weekend. Would love to see that. But as for now, your two starters, Beanie Bishop ended up playing almost, the majority of the snaps there on defense. He ends up with 60. Wilson Lamp with 46. Then you get Malachi Ruffin and Montre Miller both getting 12 snaps. Then at the safety position, this is the other area where backup outpaced the starter. Anthony Wilson, of course, got to start at the cat safety position with 53 snaps. But we know Aubrey Burks is West Virginia's starter at the free safety position. Been a lot of good things said about Aubrey Burks, and rightfully so, after how highly he graded out last season. Bit of a mixed bag for him in the first game, but I certainly don't think there was a lack of effort there, and you certainly see the potential as well, and I expect him to make a lot of plays throughout the season. But in this game, Keyshawn Cobb, the transfer in from Buffalo, actually ends up outpacing him in snaps. Keyshawn Cobb with 43 snaps, Anthony Wilson with 53 snaps, and then you get Aubrey Burks with 40 snaps. So there's an update on the snap counts in the first game there against Penn State in the season opener for the Mountaineers, in case you guys hadn't got a chance to check that out yet. Timothy Hall says, great show. Appreciate you hopping on here and chiming in. Timothy, thank you for the kind words, and I'll catch your other comment here momentarily after running through those snap counts. Got my mouth a little dry. Take a swig of my coffee. Much better. Much better. How many true freshmen played? Timothy Hall asks. I don't have the special team snaps on here, so not including special teams, but I do know that Rodney Gallagher played on special teams, so you could probably add him to the count. But just running through this list quickly, I didn't see too many. Durge, he's not true. He's a redshirt freshman. I don't know. Do we have any that played true freshman wise besides Gallagher? I mean, Traylon Ray and Gallagher obviously went over those briefly. Traylon Ray, of course, got 11 snaps. Gallagher, as I said, got in on the 1 snap on offense. He played on special teams, though, according to Neil Brown. So those two got in. I believe those are the only 2 true freshmen that got in, but there'll be more that play this coming Saturday. Certainly you would expect to see that, but throughout the season, I think there'll be some guys that contribute, and more on those coming up in the injury updates portion, though, Timothy. There's another guy I'm sure that people are curious about. We'll talk about him briefly, but there's an update on the snap counts there. Wanted to provide that for you guys starting out. And that led me to, of course, formulate a depth chart. Like I said, the little chess match, whatever you want to call it, being coy, from James Franklin and Neil Brown. We didn't get a depth chart like we usually do, with the game notes or whatever to open the week. Haven't seen one yet released this week for Duquesne either. Maybe we'll get one in the coming days. So I decided, just based on who started the game against Penn State and those snap counts that I just shared with you guys, to try and formulate my own my own depth chart. And I'm going to try and update this as the season goes along, and maybe I'll start doing depth chart update videos, kind of akin to the roster update videos I started doing this offseason, just updating the West Virginia roster as players are added. Maybe I'll try and update the depth chart weekly, especially if one's released, then I can update it officially. If not, I'll just try and project out here as I did on this one. But I feel it's pretty accurate to what we would see in the game, at least based on what we saw. This is just, like I said, just based on snap counts against Penn State. So some of these may change because I'm not factoring in guys that were injured against Penn State that may be playing against Duquesne, just things like that, just solely based on kind of what we saw against Penn State. But let me share what I got here. So as far as the depth chart, this is obviously quarterback, goes without saying. You're too deep there. Garrett Green with Nico Marchiol serving as the backup currently, but looks like Nico may get in on some snaps in games, especially if they try to get him involved against competition like Penn State. Seems like he'll have a role in this offense. Running back, the 2 main ones that we saw, of course, were C.J. Donaldson and Jalen Anderson. So that's who I've got 1 and 2 right now, but we know West Virginia has a couple other backs that could factor in there. Wide receiver position, like I said, there are multiple bodies that I think will factor into the wide receiver position, that names you won't see right now because they didn't play in this first game. And I think, like I said, after this game against Duquesne, I can update this again, and maybe some of these guys will slide in on here. But just based on what we saw, I had to do it this way. Also, didn't include, I know West Virginia has another slot wide receiver position, which I believe is the H, which would normally be on here. But I didn't include it just because the simple fact West Virginia didn't really run any 10 personnel hardly against Penn State. A lot of that was game plan based, according to the coaches, of course. They ran a lot of 12 personnel and, 21 at times even. So didn't get that, second slot receiver on the field hardly any. And a lot of times didn't even have a third one on the field. But when they did, it was Preston Fox. So for now, I just included the one slot position. Didn't include the H, which if you include the H, you probably get Rodney Gallagher on there as one of the two there on the two deep. And, maybe you slide Jeremiah Aaron in there too or something like that. But for what I've got now, just based on the game against Penn State, I just included these three receiver positions. At the X, Devin Carter and Traylon Ray. And then at the Z, the other outside position, Cortez Braham and Jeremiah Aaron, your two JUCO guys you brought in last season. And then in the slot, Preston Fox and Jarrell Williams. Preston Fox definitely saw the most snaps in the slot of anyone all night. I think it was, 36 there I shared in the snap counts. Let me double check on that. 36 snaps for him. And then, of course, I put Jarrell Williams behind him because he saw 2 snaps as opposed to Traylon Ray, Rodney Gallagher, who only saw 1. I think in the future it'll probably be Rodney Gallagher there backing up Preston Fox if he doesn't end up, sliding in as a starter eventually. I think West Virginia needs to get a little bit more explosiveness on the field at times. And I think, some of those guys that were missing from game 1 will factor into that as the season goes along. Like I said, more on that later in the injury updates, but that's what I got for now on the wide receiver depth chart. Tight end, the two deep, obviously, Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis, the main two you'll see. Not factoring in, a fullback on this depth chart either, which would obviously be Luke Hamilton. West Virginia rarely uses one. When they do, it'll be Luke Hamilton on the field. And if you had a second stringer, it would be the other preferred walk-on, Colin McBee. Left tackle, Wyatt Milam, and then the backup, Nick Malone. Obviously talked about when Wyatt Milam was out briefly for a sprained ankle. That's who we saw. Left guard, Thomas Remick, obviously played the whole game. I put Jaquay Hubbard there as the backup just because I feel like whoever's not playing at the one guard position, we know it's Yates and Hubbard that's been battling there. Seems like Yates is getting the majority of the snaps currently, but I think whoever isn't in there would be the guy to go in if something was to happen to one of West Virginia's interior linemen moving throughout the season. So that's why I've got him there second string instead of a Sully Weedman or a Mo Hamilton. Same goes at center with Zach Frazier. I think if something, knock on wood, don't even want to say it, was to happen, you would slide Brandon Yates over to center. That's why they've worked on snapping with him. They've also let Doug Nestor snap some. I think one of those two would probably be the guy. I've got Yates there on this two deep for now. And then, like I said, at right guard, it's Yates or Hubbard. Yates outpaced Hubbard in snaps by a lot. And he started the game. So Yates there at number 1, Hubbard at number 2. There is other centers on the roster that I think will be pieces in the future. I think Landon Livingston and I think Charlie Katarinchik, they were talking that they've been working with him on snapping some too, so maybe they even try and factor him in there. But then right tackle, Doug Nestor, obviously the starter, and I put Nick Malone as the backup there because I think he's kind of the swing guy at the tackle position. If something they were ever to need a guy, we even saw West Virginia use him as like a third tight end when they wanted to get a heavy personnel on the field near the goal line. He was in there as a tackle eligible off that left side on West Virginia's touchdown run to C.J. Donaldson, if I'm not mistaken. So I've got him in there as the backup at tackle in favor of, a guy like a Johnny Williams, who I think would be the next in line there, despite being a true freshman. And that's a true freshman that could play throughout the season. I know someone asked that question a second ago, and that's one guy that could factor in. I did a video on the true freshmen that I believe have the best chance to play this season at this time. You probably check that out on the channel. Still kind of believe that. Maybe there's some others that you could add into that, but I think, as far as avoiding redshirt, those guys are the most likely, but I don't think Johnny Williams will avoid redshirt. He could play in the 4 games though, in the up to 4 games though. Before I flip over to the defensive depth chart, let me catch up on some comments here. Timothy Green says, never ever come between a man and his coffee. Indeed, man. I'm still looking for that coffee sponsorship as much as I drink coffee on these live streams and shows and stuff. You think I'd have one by now, but hey, maybe one day, but appreciate you chiming in as always, man. Let's check out the defensive side of the depth chart. Encourage everyone else that's in here live. Drop your thoughts in the chat. Any questions you got, we'll answer those along the way here throughout the live stream. Like I said, this is going to be one of 2 this week. Going to try and do another one coming up most likely on Thursday. So be another chance to chat chance to chat with you guys then. And by the time we do the next one, hopefully our podcast episode will be out. You'll hear our predictions for the game against Duquesne, and we can get your all score predictions there as well. That'll be fun to do. But here, drop any questions you have in regards to WVU and the season, the upcoming game, the previous game, or any thoughts you've had as well. Let's talk about it. But let's talk a little bit more about this depth chart. Let's look at the defensive side. Defensive end, Sean Martin, obviously, goes without saying, the number one guy there. Tomiwa Durje, I've got there as the second stringer. He saw the 8 snaps that he did, got the sack. Defensive tackle, Eddie V, played the most. And then I talked about Day-Day Hawkins and his potential to be disruptive. That's the 1 and 2 there. Nose tackle, Mike Lockhart, the starter. I thought he looked good in the action that he got. And then Fatorma Mulba, the Penn State transfer. A lot has been talked about how strong he is, his power, and I think that he showcased that in the snaps that he was in. And I think he's going to be a good player for West Virginia at the nose tackle position there as well. He's the second stringer. Bandit, we talked about Jared Bartlett and Tyron Bradley being the 2 guys seeing action there. Will linebacker and Mike linebacker. Now, I currently have Tyreek Austin Cave backing up Lee Coba, but I maybe even should have put or Caden Bizer because I think that that's kind of where it is. Caden Bizer got the snaps over him last season. Neither one of those 2 saw the field in game 1. We'll see what happens moving forward. But I've got Austin Cave there. He was a scholarship player. I know Bizer is a scholarship player now as of, about a week or so ago. And he has, been the one that's seen more playing time. So it very well could be Caden Bizer there. And also, I want to throw in the caveat that this could change, and maybe I should have, Lee Coba at Will and Trey Lathan and Mike based on the first game. But I'm just waiting to see in the second game if that holds true. If it does hold true, then I will switch it. But I just want to make sure it wasn't only just for the Penn State game that they were doing that. But like I said, in the Penn State game, Trey Lathan played the Mike and Lee Coba played the Will. But for now on this depth chart, I've got Trey Lathan, first string at the mic, backed up by Jaffa Veras. And then at the mic, like I said, Lee Coba and Tyreek Austin Cave. The spear position, the 2 guys that you're going to see playing the most there, the 2 guys that you saw in the game against Penn State, Hershey McLaurin and Lance Dixon. The cornerback position, one of them I've got Beanie Bishop, backed up by Malachi Ruffin. The other one I've got Wilson Lamp, backed up by Montre Miller. Free safety, Aubrey Burks and Keyshawn Cobb. Cat safety, Anthony Wilson and Marcus Floyd. Marcus Floyd, I'm going to talk about him in a second in the injury update. We'll see what happens moving forward there with that. Maybe another number 2 there in the coming weeks if we ever get an update on that. But kicker, we had Michael Hayes there. Seemed like he won that job, handled the kickoff duties and the extra point duties. And then Oliver Straw, of course, was doing a good job as the punter, -1 shank. Everything else, I know he had at least 2 down inside the 20. So fair job overall there. But that's what I've got so far as a depth chart is concerned. Stephen Keel, appreciate you, man. Answer your question momentarily. Steven, don't think I've seen you in here before. Appreciate you tuning in and chiming in, man. Hope you're subscribed. And if you're not, be sure and do so, man. Ton of West Virginia content here. But he asks, why did they not play the backup quarterback more and pass the ball with him? Great question. I don't know. And maybe in hindsight, Neil Brown probably would have done that differently. The thing that he said was that he wanted to get Nico involved in the game. But I think obviously the situations in which he chose to put him in the game were very questionable and didn't put him in a position to succeed. And the only time that he was going to let him pass the ball was off that crazy jet sweep motion on a 4th and 2 late in the game, cold off the bench. So didn't give him a ton of chances to succeed. I don't know why they didn't. The only thing that I can say to that is that Neil Brown said that the reason that they chose Garrett Green was, the main factor anyways was decision-making. So to me, it means that Garrett is probably shown right now to be a little bit more careful with the ball. We saw that that's the one major positive that you can bring out of the Garrett's performance in game 1 was that he didn't turn the ball over any. We didn't turn the ball over as an offense. Didn't have any real game management issues. So he did a good job in that aspect. So maybe, with the opener being Penn State, they didn't feel like Nico was ready to manage those things and felt like he would be a little bit rattled if that was his first, career start, and maybe thought turnovers could be an issue. So I think that that's why they ultimately chose Garrett. Now, if they really love Nico's talent and feel like he's ultimately got the higher ceiling, I think we'll see him play more and more throughout the season. But also, I stated earlier, the fact that they did try and get him in at least a couple of snaps against Penn State shows that he's going to be involved in this offense in some way moving forward throughout the season. Ultimately, if you're asking me, I think obviously Nico probably has the higher ceiling of the two. I mean, Nico's top 20 all-time recruit at West Virginia, in WVU football history, one of the highest rated quarterback commits we've ever gotten. So I think that that's a guy that obviously has a lot of talent. So I think overall he's got the higher ceiling. It's probably just a matter of when he's ready. And so is Neil Brown just playing Garrett Green as a placeholder until Nico's ready? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. Only the coaching staff knows the answer to that. But obviously, we saw Garrett miss some throws, and we know Nico's been known as a better passer, so I can see why you're asking the question. But, I'm not too sure. But I think you'll see certainly more Nico this Saturday. I think ideally, that's what I stated earlier. This Saturday would be a game where you would love to see Nico play probably at least a couple quarters, because you wanted him to have experience, especially if you're going to need to call upon him in the backyard brawl. So hopefully we'll see more Nico this coming Saturday, and we'll see him get out there and sling it, because I believe that's where he's truly talented, being a little left-handed gunslinger. But don't let him fool you. He can run the ball too. He's a different style than Green. Green's great at forcing missed tackles, great at, quote unquote, juking people, and has that excellent speed. Nico's not slow by any means, but he's more of a powerful kind of runner. Think more of Tim Tebow type or something like that, that type of running. Skylar Howard even, I think maybe more compare Nico to that style. But I think, Nico's going to bring something to the table whenever his number is called, Stephen. But appreciate the question. Timothy says, we could have without a doubt capitalized on passing attempts they left open to us. Yeah, we could have. There were certainly a lot of times where Garrett, missed a throw, and then we saw a couple of drops as well. I thought the best pass Garrett made on the day was the throw to Preston Fox in the end zone that he just couldn't quite haul in. And Preston Fox is a guy that, we know makes a ton of amazing catches. So that's surprising, and I think he'll make up for it moving forward in the season. We'll see him haul in at least another touchdown, I'm sure. But, yeah, there were certainly opportunities in the passing game that were there that we could have capitalized on. Is that a timing issue? Is that a chemistry issue? Were nerves at play in front of, the largest crowd they'll play against all season, the largest crowd that any of our players have faced at WVU that they had seen. So maybe nerves were a factor as well. It's hard to say, but there definitely were times the passing windows were there. And that's, I've tried not to knock on Garrett too much, and because I can say that there's another positive in which he was making the right reads on a lot of the passing plays. He was seeing the open man. He was just missing the throw, or the rush was there and he couldn't step into the throw and make an accurate pass. So I think, the positive signs are great game management from Garrett, didn't turn the ball over any, and knows what they want him to do in this offense, and was making the right reads. And as Timothy said, it looked like guys were getting open, which has kind of been an issue in the past, is wide receivers getting separation. Even a couple times I saw Devin Carter get separation on Kalen King, one on a go ball that Green just missed him by a little bit, but he had a step or two on Kalen King. So if he's getting separation on a guy like Kalen King, who's one of the best corners in the country, going to be a first rounder, probably bodes well for him at the receiver position. I think we got to get some other guys involved there. Going to talk about some injury updates here in just a second, and I think we're going to get some guys back that can really help us with those injury updates. But having said that, there definitely were opportunities there for us in the passing game, and I think there will be opportunities there for this team in the passing game throughout the season because West Virginia's running game is going to be very good. Their offensive line is very good at run blocking. So teams are going to load the box, and I think West Virginia is going to need to take advantage of that with play action, and get some speed on the field to threaten over the top when people do load the box. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's continue on with the injury update here. I want to share with you guys that Neil Brown did provide a bit of an injury update on some guys, and two of those are wide receivers that we believe can help West Virginia this season. And both of those are guys that have good speed, probably two of the more speedy receivers that West Virginia brought in. One being Deshaun Polk, the transfer from Kent State, also is believed to be a good special teams player. So maybe we'll see him back on returns with Beanie Bishop. I believe Justin Johnson was back there with Beanie Bishop in this game, but maybe it'll be Polk moving forward. We'll see. I know he was a return specialist in his career, but as far as those two are concerned, E.J. Horton, who is the receiver that has talked about his speed a ton. I believe I covered it in a live stream and maybe even a video on the channel early in the fall camp, but he's a guy that people have raved about his speed. So I think he's really going to be, one of the main deep threats for the Mountaineers this season. He is injured. He'll be out again this week against Duquesne. But the good news is he's expected to return for the big one, the backyard brawl against Pitt. So that will be good. I mean, it's not good that he's injured. I don't want to ever call an injury good, but the silver lining is Pitt's not going to really have any film on E.J. Horton. I mean, they'll have some on him in Marshall, but they don't know how West Virginia plans to use him. And so maybe West Virginia can sneak him on the field and he can provide a game-breaking, long touchdown pass, get behind the Pitt defense in week 3 when he returns. That's the Marshall transfer, E.J. Horton. But he'll be out again this week, expected to hopefully return, fingers crossed, in week 3 there for the backyard brawl. And then Deshaun Polk, who I said he was also out for this game, but he will return this week against Duquesne. Should get our first look at Deshaun Polk, the Kent State transfer. And then I know someone earlier asked about true freshmen. The one standout true freshman, we did a video here on the channel that really performed awesome. Appreciate everybody that really tuned into that video and made it be one of our, better performing videos in recent history. And that's a video on Jaheim White, who was another true freshman running back that came in and has really made a splash, came in the spring, led the team in rushing yards throughout fall camp, made play after play in the scrimmages. Unfortunately, seems like in the last little bit of fall camp, he suffered an injury. We didn't know about that. So after the game, a lot of people were saying, where was Jaheim White? We heard a ton about Jaheim White. Where was Jaheim White? And now we know he was injured. Missed week 1, but believe that he will return against Duquesne, and we will get to see a guy that's believed to maybe be a freshman phenom for the Mountaineers, because he's a guy that's going to see the field, not because of necessity. We know West Virginia already had a deep running back room, but because he's so good that they can't keep him off the field. They're going to find some touches for him. And he's one of the shiftiest guys on the roster and one of the fastest guys on the roster that's going to really make Mountaineer fans feel a bit of nostalgia, I think, for those little smaller framed, short, diminutive players that West Virginia used to have that were really home run hitters, that were super, quick twitch players that could make people miss and make big plays with their speed. You think Noel Devine, Jock Sanders, Tavon Austin, those type of guys. And West Virginia hasn't had a guy in that kind of mold in a long time, really. And Jaheim White has that capability. I mean, the great Jed Drenning himself on the signing day special, the university's official signing day special they did back when he signed way back in December of 22, compared him to Steve Slayton even. So that's the kind of talent we're talking about with Jaheim White. Coming out of the state of Pennsylvania, and looks like he'll get to make his debut against Pennsylvania team in Duquesne, and hopefully get to have a good performance there and in the backyard brawl. But I'm really excited about Jaheim White. Hate that he was injured, but hoping to see him make his debut this week. And then on the defensive line, Asani Redwood's a guy that racked up a ton of sacks in high school. We're really excited about him, but he had the year-long injury that he's still trying to recover from. Still out, going to be out for the next couple of weeks. Maybe West Virginia will get him back here by the end of September. We'll see what happens. I'm sure Coach Brown will provide updates on that moving forward. But the one thing that Coach Brown hasn't yet provided an update on yet is Marcus Floyd. And we know Marcus Floyd was injured what appeared to be the latter portion of fall camp. We only saw West Virginia play 3 safeties, so no one really spelling the cat safety there. Going to have somebody do that. So hopefully Marcus Floyd is able to get healthy. But at this time, no injury update on Marcus Floyd. He was out for the first game and haven't heard anything at this time. We'll see what happens there moving forward. So that's what I got as far as an injury update is concerned. Let me catch up on some more comments here momentarily. Wrap this up before too much longer. Like I said, this one was kind of unplanned, but we didn't get a chance to do a live stream last week, pre-game week. And that's because the fact of actually I was on my honeymoon leading up to the game. I got married this Saturday before the first game. So we were on our honeymoon that week leading up. Had recorded, the Penn State preview and stuff ahead of time and set it to upload and stuff while we were on the honeymoon. So didn't get to do a live stream last week. So wanted to do this one kind of impromptu and give you guys 2 this week. Still going to do the normal game week Q&A stream later this week and get your guys' score predictions and stuff. And hopefully you'll know ours by then, as our Duquesne preview podcast should have came out by then. But wanted to go over the snap counts, depth chart, and injury updates. So have done that. We'll catch up on some of your all's questions here and wrap it up before too much longer. But before that, let me take one more swig of coffee here. All right, much better, much better. Stephen Keel says, do you think that's just who Green is and not going to change? The verdict's still out for me because I've seen him make good throws. I thought last season when he got in the action, he really looked good. He had great timing in the offense. So I don't know if it's a chemistry issue. I don't know if nerves were at play, but I thought he looked better passing in the spring game than he did at Penn State. So that's why I'm thinking maybe nerves were a factor. But no, I don't think that that's just who he is and not going to change. I'm not going to go out and say that just yet. It's too small of a sample size to say that. And I think that Green is a guy that has a bit of an it factor to him. Like I said, Mark Yole's got the talent and the pedigree, but Green just has, something that you can't measure in that star rating and in that talent and stuff. It's just a little bit of moxie to him and stuff. And I like what he brings to the game in that aspect. What he brings to the rushing offense is really great. I would like to see, more fakes on that read option play. I know he had several scrambles where he got out, and I know we don't want to get him injured. But, I think that there's more opportunities for him to pull some of those. But as far as the passing is concerned, I think he can improve and probably will improve as the season goes along. And if he doesn't, like I said, Nico's a guy that's, they're probably just waiting on to be ready. So we'll see what happens. But no, I don't think he's not going to change. I think nerves could have been a factor. And I think we'll see him have a better performance in this game, obviously, with it being an FCS opponent. But the real measure is going to be week 3 there at home in the backyard brawl. Let's see what he does against Pitt. If he comes out, puts on a show, then let's roll. Let's see what he can do. But we'll see what happens. But no, I don't think that's just who he is. I don't think I can say that just yet. Steven also says he's a PSU fan and wants us to beat Pitt. Hey, so do we, man. So do we. Eat shit, Pitt, right? Absolutely, forever and ever. But I'm excited about that one. I'm going up for that one. That might be the only game I get to go to this season. So excited about it. Just finally got my ticket locked in this past week, and it's going to be awesome. There was no way I wasn't going to go. Last year was my first backyard brawl I got to watch in person. I went up and watched the one at Pitt, and I was like, I can't miss the one in Morgantown. I've got to see a backyard brawl in Morgantown, especially it's a night game. Haven't played them in so long. It's going to be raucous. I was at the 2011 game against LSU, and that to this point is still the loudest game I've ever attended. I know a lot of other people feel the same way. It was the first time in my life I actually experienced the saying so loud you can't hear yourself think. Like that's literally how I felt. Like I knew what people meant when they said that when I walked into that environment of that game against LSU. And I'm expecting something similar, if not even something that may surpass that for this game against Pitt. So hopefully we do come out on top. Neil Brown certainly needs it. And if he doesn't win that one, it's honestly going to be tough for him to survive, just being honest. But I've got faith in him. I'm not out on Neil Brown just yet. There were some things that were discouraging in the first game still yet, but there were also some things that were encouraging. And I think that we look improved still yet, going back a few days removed now. I still stick to that there were some things that I am encouraged by, but the jury is still out. We'll see what happens moving forward. And that backyard brawl is going to be the telltale, Stephen. Timothy says, thank you for saying we all as Mountaineer fans want to beat Pitt really bad. Absolutely. Say it right there perfectly. WVU Football Going Deep says, dang it, YouTube gave me no notification, but Rockus and I are here for now. Awesome. Appreciate it for us, man. I don't know why I didn't send out the notification. That stinks, but hopefully it's just a one-time thing and YouTube's not trying to bury us or anything. But glad you guys are tuned in. I just let my cat Cosmo in from outside, and he's usually at the door yelling at me while I'm recording or doing a live show because he's always trying to be around me. But I try and keep him out of the office. Too many lights, cords, everything for him to mess with. So this is kind of a no Cosmo area, but he still tries to get in. And if he finds the crack in the door, he's coming in. And he's made a couple appearances on live shows and podcasts before. So you never know. You never know. W Football Going Deep adds Markio and Green both have an it factor, just different ones. Definitely think Green will get better. Great way of putting it. 100% they both have an it factor to them and have something to them. That's one thing I will say, we've talked a lot about this here on the channel, of course, and that's, Neil Brown has done everything right, it seems like, around the program, but just the wins haven't came. And I think you can look at recruiting as well. What we're seeing right now is the first, two quarterbacks coming out of high school that West Virginia's, started and played since 2013, I think, was Paul Millard started a game in 2013. Ford Childress started in 2013. They were both out of high school. Trying to think if any other high school quarterbacks have started since then. Did Chris Jugganoff started a game, didn't he? I think maybe, I don't know if he started one or not, but if he did, it might have been a bowl game. Can't remember. So I don't know. But regular season wise, it's been almost a decade since we've had, quarterbacks coming out of high school. And both of these guys were highly regarded. I know I made a lot about Markio being as highly regarded as he was in his pedigree, but that's just because he was so highly rated, being one of the highest rated quarterback recruits in West Virginia history. But don't sleep on Garrett Green either. One of the first commits Neil Brown got when he got to Morgantown, and he was involved in the Elite 11. So that shows, what people thought of him coming out and his abilities. And then also just this past offseason was the Manning Passing Academy. So I think Green has potential to get better, and I think he will also. I think that people will change their tune about him. A lot of West Virginia fans are game to game. I hate to say it that way, but they are. Come Saturday, West Virginia will beat Duquesne, hopefully handedly, and people will say, man, Green really looked good. And then, we'll leave it to the next game to see how they feel about him and go from there. But I'm with you. I'm not out on Green just yet, just as I'm not out on Brown just yet. This is going to be, the telltale next few weeks. September is a big month for this program. He says currently have Raucus isolated in the room while he's getting treatment, and Bianca was crying outside the door during one video. Really worried some viewers. Yeah, I'm glad a lot of times my mic usually doesn't pick it up. And if it does, I try and edit it out as best I can. But yeah, I understand that they would probably be concerned as well if they could hear mine a lot, because he can get pretty loud with it. So I get that. I have that similar issue, but definitely you guys want to encourage you though. The name there on the screen, WVU Football Going Deep. If you're a Mountaineer fan, be sure to check out that channel, subscribe to it if you haven't already. Great West Virginia content coming out, especially since the Penn State game. Both the videos that Forrest has put out have been awesome. So check out that content if you haven't already. He says Green got just enough experience last year to build on once he was ready. Won't be nearly as affected by atmosphere in the future. Been there, done that, knows what he did wrong and needs to do. Exactly. And I think that's another great point you made in the video that you put out today, I believe it was, that what the atmosphere West Virginia saw, they won't see one, greater than that. If they even see one that matches it, which I doubt. So if nerves were a factor, they won't be a factor moving forward. So that's the good thing to look at there. And another silver lining with Green, who I agree with you, I think will get better. He will get better. But appreciate everybody that's tuned into this one live. Like I said, be sure to tune into the channel. Subscribe here if you haven't already. We're going to have plenty of West Virginia content coming throughout the season. Before every game, we're going to have a podcast preview episode. Those are run, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour long, and same for our review podcast. So you're going to get 2 podcast episodes a week. You're going to get a live stream Q&A like this one every week. You're going to get the player grades videos. I've released those the past couple of days. So that's just a brief, update of kind of the in-season football content you'll get, but there's a ton of stuff in between there. We're always doing recruiting updates, roster updates. Trying to start those depth chart updates now as well. So ton of West Virginia content for you here. And once basketball season tips off, we'll bury you with a ton of content. So if following West Virginia sports is your thing, definitely be sure to subscribe to us here at Country Roads Webcast. And we really appreciate you doing so. It really helps grow not only the Country Roads Webcast community, but grow the West Virginia brand bigger and better, which is what we're trying to do here on YouTube, right? But Be sure to subscribe to us here. Check us out on social media, Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram. Like I said, our long-form podcast episodes, you can find the video version of them here on YouTube. But if you like to tune into them, audio only, I know if you're like myself, I'm listening to podcasts, work all the time, or from grocery shopping, mowing the grass, whatever. So sometimes it's easier to listen to the audio version you can find on a podcast platform. And you can find our podcast episodes on those. And sometimes I'll take these live streams, the audio from it, and upload it there as well. So be sure to subscribe to us there as well if that's your thing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. Just search Country Roads Webcast. And then, as it says there on the bottom of the screen, you can follow us on X/Twitter at WVU Country Roads. But really appreciate you guys that have tuned into this one live. If you're tuned in live or if you're catching it on a playback, hit the like button. Really helps. If you didn't get a chance to tune in live and chat with us, drop some thoughts in the comments. I'll respond to you there in text form as well. But plenty of Mountaineer sports content coming in the future. Hopefully it's coming after more wins than losses. Looking forward to hopefully a successful 2023 Mountaineer football season. But either way, it's going to be fun to discuss it with you all throughout Mountaineer Nation along the way. So having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.